Hello Nightmare fans, and welcome to the first installment of Nightmarish Fables. Hope it doesn't scare you too much. Our first story takes place in the early modern period of Japan, but may show up in an earlier text or depictions. Yamamba, as the locals call her, is an old woman who lives in the mountains. But Yamamba is a demon that will chase or devour any weary traveler too close to where she happens to be. She is said to look like an old woman, small and frail. Could she possibly look into your soul? As in some translations, she is depicted as a somewhat decent person, helping the good while teaching the ill-hearted a lesson. In other translations, she eats whoever gets lost in her mountains. But where did Yamamba come from? Where did she orient? Well, there was an old custom in Japan many centuries ago where if there was a famine or financial problems, it became clear that it was unachievable to feed everyone in the family. These families now had to make a choice, and that was to remove someone so that the rest can live. And most often, the very young, or in Yamamba's case, the very old. This practice is known as obaste, which translates to abandoned. In medieval Japanese literature, this female oni, or demon, had a nurturing aspect. This version of her was not entirely evil. By the end of the 17th century, she was also the mother to Kintaro, a legendary child with superhuman strength. She raised a boy on Mount Ashigara. There are different versions of Yamamba's story of how she took the boy in. In this particular version, the mother to Kintaro gave birth to him to what is now known as Yamamba, which is now a city located by the sea. She was forced to leave the village and flee to the forest of Mount Ashigara to raise her son alone. Here's where this legend gets muddled. No one really knows what happens next. There are different versions of the same legend where she could have left the child behind to die alone in the wilderness, or alternatively, Kintaro's mother died while trying to take care of her son alone in the forest. Either way, Yamamba took in the boy and raised him as her own. But why did she feel the need to flee her home, to live out in the wilderness? It was because her husband was at war with a samurai named Sakata and his uncle. She wanted what was best for her son, so she fled. Seemingly, all of the translations agree that Kintaro was an active and determined-minded child who had a heavily built but strong and healthy body, reddish in complexion, and only wore a bib with golden Chinese characters. But you may be thinking, why Chinese characters? Chinese script forms a major part in Japanese writings. Now, by the 18th century, Yamamba was portrayed by ukiyo-e artists as a alluring woman. In today's Japanese society, it is very familiar with the Yamamba. When her name is said out loud, it brings images of an old demon that devours humans.